The more things change, the more they stay the same. Since I've been trapped in my flat for pretty much the best part of a year, I decided to get myself a Switch just so I could pass the time. It's crazy how nostalgic it's got me feeling. Like, I imagine all the hours I used to spend as a kid playing on my Game Boy. You always think that you've grown as a person, but it feels like I've kind of swapped one obsession for a new one. I used to spend all my time playing games, but now I spend it making art. And it kind of got me thinking that I wanted to make something new. I saw this rug mirror, which I really wanted to recreate in my own style, since I already make a whole bunch of rugs on this channel, and it'd be nice to push it in a different direction. And since nostalgia's hitting me, I thought a Game Boy cartridge would be a really sick way to express how I'm feeling through this new medium. I really love how the old Game Boy cartridges used to come in different colours, especially for specific games, so I want to make it a little bit more colourful, but still sticking to the original vibe. Speaking of colours, I've really been enjoying the Nike Spiridon. I think the retro colourway is really funky and it could really add something to the design. So to start off with, I'm going to open up Adobe Illustrator so I can make this. First I'm going to go to my rectangle tool and draw out the basic shape. Next I want to get the inside rectangle and change the lines just so they're a bit more thicker and you can see them a bit better. Now I'm going to go to the rounded rectangle tool, and what it allows me to do is make a circular shape at the edges as I just pull them in. Next, if I go to another rectangle, and I can do the sides where it indents and duplicate them using Command C and Command V on my keyboard. Next I want to make a triangle, so funnily enough I go to the star tool to do that and press down on my keyboard, which changes the amount of sides it has. And I can just morph the triangle to fit more into the shape that I need it to be. This one's more of an acute angle. Now you notice there's a slight corner missing in the Game Boy cartridge, so if I go to my Pathfinder and click this button, it will let me get rid of that part of the shape, and if I just push it to the back, you can now see all the rest of the shapes that I've made. Next I just need to do the little gutters that was at the top. I'll just draw one thin rectangle and then copy it down by holding down Alt on my keyboard and then dragging down each shape. And with them all selected, I can just do the same thing and drag it to the side, which gives me everything that I need except my logo, which I'm just going to move over now. Lastly, I just want to add in the colors, so I'm going to start with mostly grey like the traditional cartridge and just add in the colors inspired by the Spiridon and also the more colourful cartridges that Nintendo came out with. Finally, I'm just going to add in the background. I like to give my rugs a thick black border just because it means that the design doesn't bleed over when I'm fixing the rug. And just like that, we have the finished design ready to go. Now I have my design. What I need to do is make a frame for it. I just purchased a 2.5 meter piece of wood and then cut down the pieces into a square shape, just a bit bigger than the rug that I'm actually making. That way I have enough space to make the rug, but I'm still being economical. I'm just using a simple hacksaw to make this. It's not something that's going to take up a lot of space in your house if you want to make these frames yourself. Once I have all my wood pieces laid out, I'm just going to take my drill. I just have a simple power drill, nothing too fancy. You don't need much to get this done. I have these corner brackets which I got from the same place where I got the wood. They come with screws anyway, so I'm just going to screw it into each side of the corners. Once all that's done, I need to add the image onto the cloth. First I want to make sure that my frame is absolutely secure onto the wall and it won't move while I'm drawing. You'll find that with projectors they flap around a bit, so sometimes the top will be an angle or the bottom will be at an angle, and then it will give you an uneven design, so I just had to use a ruler to measure that up and then just go around it with a Sharpie. But one mistake that I did make is that when you're using a projector you want to flip the design over, so I actually had to write out the logo again in red ink because otherwise it would be completely unlegible, even though it kind of already is, because a lot of you guys don't understand that my logo is actually just my name, CurrieGOAT. So going in with the punch needle, I just want to make sure that I'm being very careful because this is very thin lettering that I'm doing, and obviously I'm using the punch needle. It can be quite inaccurate for such things unless it's very thick letters. I would, to be honest, suggest that you do thick letters, but you know, we're experimenting, we're seeing what's working. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go across with 2 lines, so I went all the way across almost like if I was drawing it in a single line, and then double back on myself to make it twice as thick. So all of the letters in the logo are built off of 2 lines of the punch needle. And then once all of the black's done, I need to go in with the color. I'm using the lilac for the logo part as indicated by my markup. I'm just making sure that I'm going as close to the logo as possible with the first punches, just so that it's all secured in and that there's no gaps, because the worst thing would be to have gaps in the actual logo part, since I want it to be pressed in properly so that it's perfectly legible on the other side. When you're doing punch needle work, the back side, which is the side that you would use as the actual rug, tends to be very thick and bubbly, and so it's not great for very small details. This is the wool that I'm using. It's just a normal 2-ply. You can use any wool just as long as it's thick enough so that the punch needle won't catch, or it can actually get through the hole in the punch needle. I'm using a CurrieGOAT design punch needle because it's adjustable and I can use different lengths. So for the first details, I used a smaller length, and then I'm going to use for the grey the second length, because that way the grey will pop out and it will look like the colour bits are indented into the grey, very similar to how the actual Game Boy cartridge looks. I've linked below this exact punch needle that I'm using. It's actually really great because if you want to do work like this, which is very textured and also has different levels, it makes it very easy to do with the exact same type of thread that you're already using. I will say though, it's a bit jarring going from one level to another because you're used to pushing in the needle to a certain depth. If you want to get even loops all the way across, you need to make sure that you're pushing the punch needle all the way in, but you get used to a certain depth, so when you first start and you end up punching a bit shallow, which is a bit weird, but you get used to it in the end. It's not that serious. Also, another thing to take into account is that when you're using larger loop on a different level, it actually takes up more space on the back. I finished all my punching, and I'm going to very carefully with a cutting knife make a hole in the middle of it. But really, I would actually suggest you use fabric scissors because it will actually work properly. So now that I've got these edges, I'm going to hot glue down the sides of them, and then I'm going to slowly, and just with a little bit of pressure because I don't want to burn myself, the glue is still hot, push the fabric into the glue, and then do that all the way across the sides. This can be quite fiddly, but if you just make sure that you pull it all the way back so that the rug is actually pushing into the back a bit, so you can see it's not flush on the back. That way when you turn it over like this, you actually can't see any of the fabric on the back, because that can be a bit problematic and look a bit messy. All I need to do now is remove the fabric from the frame which I made and just cut out the sides so I can do the exact same thing that I did with the inside bit on the outside part. So this time I'm actually just going to cut all the way down almost to the edge so that I can fold in the sides and then glue them down. I just want to make sure I'm doing that across all of the different sides. Also, I want to cut them at an angle so there's not too much waste going on the side, making it hard to bunch up. Now I just want to glue down with a hot glue the sides the same way that I did on the inside. And like I said, you want to pull it so that the rug isn't completely flat. That way you're not going to see the excess fabric when you fold it over or when you lay it down flat on the floor or on the wall. And then now I just want to make sure that I'm putting all of the rest of the fabric down because I've only glued it at the bottom. So I'm using the PVA glue here, and I'm going to let that dry slowly, just making sure that I'm getting underneath so that the loops on the rug underneath don't pull out, because obviously if there's no glue holding them together, then there's a chance that they'll do that. And just like that, the rug part is actually done. So all I need to do is make the back frame. This is just so that if you want to mount this on the wall, because it is actually a mirror, usually it's just fine to mount a rug using the non-damaging wall strips, but since there's an extra element added onto this, I don't want the weight distribution to be off. So I'm just making sure that I'm adding this wooden backboard. I realized halfway through that because this is a hacksaw, it's not going to be able to go all the way through, so I kind of cheated and I drilled holes into the areas where I'd marked out, and then I just bent it back, which made a disgusting line which you really are going to have to work to sand down, as I did. It took me a lot longer than I want to tell you to actually get this smooth, but eventually we did. The mirror that I bought is acetate, so it's not actually glass, just because I didn't really trust glass while I'm working with it, and it actually comes with a sticky back already, which is great. Another advantage is that it's super light, so if you're hanging this on the wall, you don't need to worry about it damaging the wall. Next is just a case of using the hot glue to stick the rug directly onto the wooden frame, and then stick the wood directly onto the acetate frame. Hot glue actually works really well for this, and it sticks perfectly well. It's not coming up at all since I've actually finished this rug, and it's been there for a while. It's amazing to me that I used to spend so much time playing these games, and now I spend just as much time in my adult life making artwork inspired by the stories that they were based on. But you know what they say, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Thank you so much for watching my video, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye friends.